Welcome back to another episode of Her Workplace Unfiltered. I have been getting a lot of requests to go back to the beginning of building her workplace and more specifically, talking about year over year, what experiences I had, the lessons that I learned along the way, and providing some additional insights on the differences between different years and stages of building a business and startup. So today, I'm going to take you back to year one of building her workplace, the year that everything began. And to give you some insight, if you haven't listened to my past solo episodes, which I would encourage you to do so, I did tell the story of my experience spending over a decade in corporate, what led me to start her workplace, what that process was like of leaving corporate, taking the leap, and getting her workplace off the ground, and then provided additional insight on what the journey has been like the past 2 years. We are in year two, just finalized our second year anniversary, and just excited to share more about what those first 2 years have been like more specifically. So when I launched her workplace in October of 2023, I had a very clear mission to create a platform and resource that would help women grow, lead, advance, and thrive in their careers. And providing those resources and access to people and opportunities that would get them there. But like any new venture, the first year came with a number of surprises that I didn't really expect. Yes, it was full of excitement and momentum, but there was also uncertainty, a business pivot that we went through, and lessons that stretched me as a leader in ways that I never really expected. So again, in this episode, I want to take you behind the scenes of that first year, the real experience of building something new. And I want to share more specifically the things that went right, the things that didn't, and what those lessons were that shaped me the most as a founder and leader. So whether you are in your own year one of building a business or startup, or you're dreaming about starting something, or you're just curious about what it's really like to build something with such a big mission behind it, this conversation is for you. Again, I want to reference back to my most recent solo episode a few weeks ago, the why behind her workplace. I spent over a decade in corporate. I, as an ambitious future leader, woman professional in a male-dominated industry, I was ready to get more clarity on what my career growth looked like. And it was challenging because I struggled to find access to the resources, the people, specifically mentors and sponsors that could really help me grow and advance and continue to do so in my career so that I could reach the goals that I wanted to. And I had some really big goals, one of them being eventually getting into the C-suite of a Fortune 100 company. So I started her workplace because women like me, women who are growing in their careers, they're in entry to mid-level roles, they're stepping into managerial positions or leadership positions within their organizations. There's a huge gap and lack of access to those skill building resources, career opportunities, people, again, the mentors, the sponsors, the coaches that can really help you get to that next level in your career, those resources are lacking for this particular demographic, especially in corporate environments. So that was my why of going through the experience myself of climbing the corporate ladder and finding that there was a missing piece. And alongside of that was my passion of wanting to help and support and elevate women. Since the very beginning of my career, I built this reputation of always being the woman that people would go to for advice. And even to this day, I have people within my network that circle back with me every now and then and schedule calls with me to get career support and advice. So let's fast forward to year one of her workplace. So I had this opportunity to take over a former co-working space in New York City that was formerly occupied by a group that was a women's community. The space was sitting empty. It was an opportunity that was just presented to me through my network, which is why networking is so important. And so I tested the space over the summer of 2023 and did a few events and gathered feedback and market research and decided in October of 2023, I'm going to launch this. And what that meant was I was going to launch a membership. And the membership would include access to the physical space, but really at the core, access to the resources that I was building inside of this platform. So that was in-person events, virtual events, programming, both in-person and virtual, that was really focused on skill building, a community chat where all members could connect and share stories and get that support from one another, and some other resources of like discounts on our favorite brands, access to mentorship, to coaching. So I was at the beginning phase of kind of building out what is the platform. So launched the physical space, very quickly started to get paying customers. And that was exciting because when you finally get something off the ground and you reach and get over that threshold of securing paying customers, that's a big deal because that's proving that, okay, there's a market for this, there's interest here, and people are willing to put their hardworking money towards this company that you're building and to receive the services and product of her workplace. So that was incredible. We ended up securing over 250 members fairly quickly. I think that kind of occurred all the way through the end of the year of 2023. So really great, exciting momentum. At the same time, already had a really strong sense of what the programming was going to be. We were hosting events almost every single day. And alongside of that, started to develop partnerships with like-minded communities, started to develop relationships with brands, with individuals who hosted events in New York. And so that was an additional revenue stream that, quite frankly, I didn't necessarily uncover in the beginning. It just kind of came to me during that time. And it was really that additional revenue that just helped us continue to grow and expand. So the first couple of months of building her workplace were generating revenue. Again, I was at the space almost every single day, washing dishes, putting furniture back, making sure people were comfortable, making sure they had what they needed. I did hire a few part-time people to just help work the front desk, help me with the things that needed to be done within the physical space. I didn't really wrap my head around all of the operational SOPs that needed to be put into place, such as how many snacks are we ordering to put out in the kitchen every day? What does that look like? So it was definitely a really big learning curve for me. And I quickly realized that operating a physical space is a whole other business alongside building a paid membership community. So honestly, it was a lot. It was pretty overwhelming. And we were, just past post revenue. So I wasn't in a place at the time to bring on anyone full time to bring their experience of operating a physical space. So that was a lot. And we kept going. So for 6 months, I really dug into this business plan and model. Again, hired some part-time people, started really gathering insights from the programming and the events that we were doing. And during this time, I actually, through a connection of mine, ended up bringing on a product partner who helped me build out the first MVP of the digital product, a tech platform that members could go to access all of the resources that we were providing at the time. So this included access to all of our virtual programming and workshops and events, as well as being able to sign up for our in-person events and workshops, getting access to our discount codes with partners, being able to access the community chat through the platform, giving members the ability to build a profile on the platform so that they could showcase themselves and their interest and their experiences. And this was an overwhelming time for me because I don't come from tech. I had this big vision and still do because we are continuing to evolve and enhance our technology of what I want this platform to look like. And there's so much opportunity with integrating gamification and on-demand resources. So more to come there. But this was the beginning phase of it. And I still was pretty much utilizing our revenue. So at the time, we probably had a 20% profit margin, which that was impressive because since the very beginning, we started to profit. And just a note on that, I believe that was because I tested before we launched. So I spent 3 months of market research, gathering insights, hosting events, getting interest, getting those potential customers ready to buy. So testing is so important to build that momentum so that when you do launch, you're ready to secure those paying customers. So from the beginning, we started generating revenue and curating a profit for the business. So back to the product, this was overwhelming for me because, again, I didn't come from this background and I didn't know much about building apps and how much it costs. And so my first step was I went to Upwork and I started putting out some inquiries of like, I need a product developer, want to build an app, and interviewed a few people. Pricing was all over the place. Some developers were in the like $30,000 range. Some were in the $10,000 range. Some were in the five. Some were in the hundreds of $1,000 range. So it was overwhelming because I was like, how do I even go about this if the offering is so different along with the pricing? So luckily, in the very beginning on LinkedIn, a woman who used to be very high up at Bed Bath & Beyond was their secondhand person to the CFO, sat on their board of directors, and was actually transitioning into working for another company. She's now at Blue Dot and she's the CFO there. She reached out to me on LinkedIn in the very beginning and said, I love what you're building. I would love to connect with you and see if I can help. And it was her that introduced me to a nonprofit that had also built a product for their community. And that introduction led to the introduction of this product leader who came from ClassPass. He actually helped kind of build the beginning of ClassPass's product. So I used him and it was a great experience. We didn't end up building a product from scratch. We ended up using a platform called Softer, which integrated all of our systems. So it was a great way to just get something off the ground that looked nice, that had everything that we needed at the time. And it saved me a lot of money. And so through that experience, we were able to launch that product that next year. So the beginning of January 2024. That was the evolution of the platform, offering more resources outside of this in-person physical space and the in-person offering. So that was exciting and was really the start of building the technology. So we're now entering January 2024. We launched the product. We continue to build the membership base, specifically in New York, because the New York space was there. And one pain point of mine that I just couldn't understand at the beginning was, why is it that we have over 250 members in New York, yet on average, only 13 people are visiting the space every day and utilizing it? This was a big problem because the physical space, even though I was able to secure a really great deal to utilize the space on a month-to-month basis, by the way, I was paying 80% below market rent. So this space went for $60,000 a month. I was paying $8,000 a month. That all was because of my experience in commercial real estate. I knew how to negotiate that deal. I knew the landlord. And that's what really allowed for us, again, to capture that revenue early and start to generate a profit since the beginning. So we had this big issue of, okay, we have this 12,000 square foot space. We have members that are paying over 250 of them. But why is it that 13 are only visiting the space a day? And so that sparked the curiosity of me trying to better understand, what's the need? Is the need a physical space, or is the need community? Is it access to people? Is it the mentorship, the skill building workshops, all of those elements that women seek in order to grow and evolve in their careers? So this was the beginning of the business pivot that we went through. So I pivoted the business in June of 2024. And it was really a snowball of different things that were going on with the physical space and with the members and with those numbers that I was evaluating. And one note here is, if you ever have to make a decision, if you ever have to pivot a business, or just in general, make a really big decision, always follow the numbers. Start tracking data from the very beginning in whatever way that you can, because that is going to guide you in making those really important and tough decisions along the way. And it was that data of the actual utilization of the space that really turned on this light bulb inside of me of, is this the right business model? So all of this started happening in the spring. The landlord of the space approached me and was like, look, you've done a great job. You spent the past 6 months bringing in all of these people. You're utilizing the space every day. Would you be interested in signing a real deal? And I had this big business plan of signing a deal for a space like this very differently than other operators do. It's really hard to scale and build a co-working space. The only way to really do it and to make money is to be really creative with the real estate. And unfortunately, a lot of players today don't do this. And so that's why you've probably seen some businesses either go under or they're struggling because of the creative model that is needed to grow in this type of industry. So I had this big plan of expanding across the country and signing these really creative deals. And by the way, at the same time, so this is like in the spring, I hosted a pop-up in San Francisco took over the former wing space there. So similar space that was sitting empty. And that actually happened because this opportunity in New York, I look back on it now, and even though it didn't work out, it got us on the map. Like, we started getting press, we started getting a lot of interest. I was getting calls from competitors just saying, like, what are you building? What are you doing? So it was meant to be because it got our name out there. And because of that, we were able to host a full co-working day and event in San Francisco that started to generate interest on the West Coast. So that was really exciting. So I'm negotiating with both of these landlords of like, okay, do we take the space in New York longer term and then potentially do something in San Francisco at this other physical space? And I needed capital to be able to do both of these things. Not because I needed to spend dollars necessarily on upfitting or getting the space kind of ready for a longer term structure. It was actually the capital just needed to secure it and to show that, okay, we have money. And then I was going to invest that money in other areas of the business, such as the operational side of like streamlining operations, hiring a real team. At this time, I still had part-time contractors, and building up a real marketing strategy. So I'm negotiating with the landlords, getting close to getting a term sheet with a big prop tech VC fund as well. So lots going on here. Then we hit May. The landlord comes to me and says, I'm so sorry, but we just got an offer for another user to take the space, and they're going to pay a full market rent. And I'm really sorry, but we're going to take the deal. So this is post-COVID. A lot of buildings were still sitting empty. And I was like, oh my God, this business is going to go under. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, we're going to have to move out. So it was not only me understanding the metrics, having doubts about this physical component, but it was that alongside of this situation that was out of my control. So he said, look, you have 30 days. You're going to have to move out of the space. So this is when I went back to the why. Why was I building her workplace in the first place? I was building it to provide women with access to mentorship, to resources, to career opportunities, to skill building, so that they could grow and advance in their careers, building a stronger pipeline for women stepping into leadership and C-level positions. And the data is also there too, of over 75% of professional women in corporate environments feel like they don't have access to the right resources. And their company is not necessarily internally supporting them. So there is a big hole in this market. Does any of that have to do with physical space? No. So I leaned on my network. I called all of my advisors. I walked through the whole situation with them. And they were amazing at just being that sounding board, bringing me back to the why, presenting new ideas of how I could pivot this business to make it successful, sharing those case studies of past similar businesses that had challenges or struggled. And so I made the decision, first off, not to close down because there was real momentum and we had revenue. We were gaining a profit. I couldn't just stop now. I was too deep in it. Like, I was just getting started. I'm still just getting started. And so we moved out. And what happened, to my surprise, was we retained the majority of our customers. How we did that, these members were paying membership fees to also be able to get access to a physical space. So I called around all my commercial real estate contacts. So Convene, WeWork, Industrious, Tishman Speyer, pretty much any operator or landlord that had physical workspaces. And I said, look, I have this amazing network of women. Would you be interested in partnering with us? Found a partnership with Tishman Speyer and negotiated a partnership deal in like a week of we want to be able to provide our members with access to your physical spaces. And Tishman has spaces all across the country. So we negotiated a deal to where they would give us access and our members would be able to have a place to go. And it was amazing because it kind of filled that gap of potentially the risk of losing customers because of this piece of the offering being taken away. One other lesson here that I learned is that if you are offering a product or service, it's so much easier to build on the offering and or increase pricing along the way. When you're taking things away or even decreasing pricing, that puts you at risk and it also hurts the customer. It's so much easier to build upon the offering to increase pricing as you go. So this was something that I didn't want to take away. And it was incredible because it just allowed for me to keep going. So this is in June. Summer months are always a little bit slower because, people are traveling. We don't do as much programming and events because there's just not as much of a need. So this was really a time of kind of reevaluating for me. Okay, what is the business plan moving forward? And it was investing in the technology. And it was shifting to, okay, we're no longer a co-working community for women. Now we are a career platform for women. So what did that mean? That meant that I needed to invest more in the technology. It meant that we needed to grow our reach. I didn't want customers that were just in New York City. We didn't have this like dedicated space anymore that was just in New York. We now had access to this portfolio of spaces across the country. So what we did was decided to launch in other cities. So Tishman Speyer gave us access to physical locations in Boston, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, and then New York. So I said, okay, let's just start doing events in these cities and try to build up the membership there. And that's what we did. So this is almost about to hit the first year of business. Decided to launch in LA and San Francisco in September, and then also launched in Boston and Chicago in October. Those launches tripled our growth, which meant our revenue and our membership. It was incredible. And by the way, I just want to mention, at the same time, I was having a baby. I actually got pregnant in February, kind of a little bit of a surprise. And my baby was due in September. So while all this is going on, the business pivot, you can imagine the stress of that, having to figure out what the new strategy was, building up these partnerships, expanding into other cities and building out the network there. This is all happening while I'm in like my second and third trimester. So I can't stress enough hiring the right people. I ended up bringing on, during the first year, a part-time contractor who became our head of growth. And she was incredible because she really came at the right time, had experience in startups, and was really there to kind of help me not only get this off the ground, but get it growing and moving in that first year. And she was really instrumental in getting us to that next phase of growth. And so it was just a lot of things at once. This whole experience of year one, it was all about having the right people around me. So the right team, hiring the right people that were a great fit for where the business was at this stage. leaning on my advisors and my mentors to get the advice and support that I needed, especially during the pivot of the business. And then building the trust of customers and the network who they were in it from the beginning because they saw the growth and momentum. They had the opportunity to get to know me as a leader because I was at that physical space every day. I was talking to customers every day, still am, gathering feedback, making that personal connection as a leader. That's so important to really learn who your customer is and build that one-on-one relationship with them. That builds long-term trust that gives you that stability. A few other lessons that I took away from the experience of year one, I discovered my own resilience. When I launched her workplace, I had this mindset of, okay, I just left my decade-long corporate career. What do I have to lose at this point? So I just had this mindset of like, you got to keep going, follow the data, follow the feedback. And I kind of just like let that guide me. And I tried to stay really positive and resilient along the way. And I learned a lot too about redefining what success is. Could you say that, yes, the co working model failed? Sure. But I learned a lot through that experience and continued to let my values guide me of what are my own values? What are the values of her workplace? What's the mission of this company? Does that align with this business model that I've created and that I've been testing? Found out that it didn't and decided again to pivot to find the thing that would be in more alignment. And it was falling down, getting up, falling down, getting up, and being resilient throughout that process that has allowed for me to keep going, even when times get really, really, really tough, which we're going through a tough time right now. And can't wait to share more about that. But even when times are tough, which every single entrepreneur and company, they go through challenging times. It is what it is of building something. You have to remember that it's actually the failures and those moments of challenges where you, not just the company, but you as a leader grow the most. So I almost crave those opportunities because I know that when you're on the other side of it, you come out a better person. So that's another just big lesson that I've learned. What I'm most proud of during year one was taking the bet on myself and just continuing to keep things moving, staying positive throughout the process, and also saying no to things that weren't the right fit. There were some partnerships that didn't really work out. It wasn't really aligned with our mission. There were some investors that I talked with that too, like didn't really align. I actually didn't end up signing that term sheet from the VC fund. Along the way, I had these like gut feelings. So listen to those little voices of uncertainty because that does tell you something. So yeah, I'm just most proud of that. I took the leap and I did it and I launched it and I got it off the ground and I just kept going even when I faced challenges. So one takeaway from this as well is if you are thinking of launching something, if you are at the beginning of building a business, it doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. I'm very much the type of founder and leader. People say this to me all the time that I fly the plane while I build it. And I very much am like that. Everything that I do on a daily basis is testing and learning. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like when I launched her workplace, we barely had a website. Our social media was kind of a mess. Like, could I have spent 6 months to a year building it? Sure. But would we be where we are now as fast as we've gotten there? No. So it's actually all about just doing it. Just launch it, take it day by day, test and learn along the way, follow the numbers and the data, and just keep going because it's all about building the momentum and consistency. So I hope this was helpful in sharing the journey of her workplace in year one. Stay tuned for the follow-up episode where I will share the journey of year two, which has been, I will say, the most challenging year. So I can't wait to share more. But thank you so much for being here today and for listening. Bye.